Hi, so we're taking a drive today from Portland, Oregon to Lake Billy Chinook and the Cove of the Palisades. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the geology that we're going to be seeing as we're driving over there. So we're going to be taking Highway 26 and we're going to just touch on Highway 97 and then we're going to wind our way down into Lake Billy Chinook and the Cove of the Palisades. It's a canyon that's cut by 3 rivers. I'll just start in the Portland area of the drive. We're going to get on Highway 26 and we're going to be driving through like the northwestern end of the Willamette Valley, which is one of the many geologic provinces in the state. In the valley, what we're going to be driving by are a bunch of all these lumps, and a lot of these lumps like Mount Tabor, Powell Butte, Larch Mountain, they're all known as the boring volcanics, and there are all these volcanic vents that have erupted in the Portland area valley. There's like 80 of them, and there's all these volcanic units are known as the boring lavas. So we're going to drive through all those lumps you see, they're all little volcanoes, and then we're going to start climbing up into the Cascades. And so the Cascades are actually divided geologically into the Western Cascades and the High Cascades. The High Cascades are the ones that are currently active. They are topographically higher and they are situated further east. So we're going to start by driving through the Western Cascades, and they're a much older chain of volcanoes. They erupted from 40 million years ago to about 5 million years ago. They're inactive today, so all that's happening to them is they're getting eroded. But they're really cool and they're very ancient. And you'll see a lot of evidence of that as you're driving up. So you're driving through the Western Cascade volcanics while you're going through Boring to Zigzag to Government Camp. There's going to be some big gray rocks on the outcrop. It's like a big road cut. All these big gray rocks from like mile marker 49 to about mile marker 51. And this is some diorite, which is actually rare to find exposed on the surface of the planet because it is the roots of that volcano. And this is a 9 million year old rock. And so when the Western Cascades became inactive, this was the magma chamber. And it cooled at depth. And so now through uplift and erosion, it's exposed on the surface right by the road. You drive right by it, and it's really amazing. And then you transition into the High Cascades right there. And the High Cascades were active from about 7 million years ago to present day. They're currently active. So those two cascade ranges kind of meet up both geographically and in time. Then you start getting into the High Cascades, the current deposits of Mount Hood. And Mount Hood is much, much younger. It started to erupt about 500,000 years ago, and it's still, doing its thing. But that's not the only volcano that the High Cascades have formed. There's been a lot of volcanoes in this area. There's going to be a lot of evidence of that on the eastern side, kind of all up in the Cove of the Palisades, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. When you pass the Timberline Road, about a mile beyond that, you're going to see another gray outcrop, and that's an andesite that was erupted from Mount Hood about 120,000 years ago. Pretty recent stuff. And some of the other exposures that you're going to see are kind of ash flow. You have ash flow tuffs, lahars, which is like an ash flow that got saturated, so it becomes a mud flow, but they're both, sedimentary kind of volcaniclastic materials. Volcaniclastic means fire rock from Mount Hood, and then you're going to continue on Highway 26. You're going to go over the crest of the volcano, and you're starting to go downhill down the eastern side of the Cascade Range. And a lot of these deposits are going to be like 20 miles of forest. You're not going to see many rocks, and that's just old lahars and pyroclastic flows from Mount Hood eruptive events. Now, another interesting thing about Mount Hood is 1.5 million years ago, there was a whole other volcano right there. It has since eroded away, and this one has been built up right on top of it, but that's known to geologists as the Sandy Glacier volcano. Let's continue. We're driving down, and we're getting close to Warm Springs, and we're going to make this turn, and there you're going to see the Deschutes River starting to cut a canyon into the earth, and there's going to be a lot of exposures of some really interesting things. You're going to see this formation that you're going to see a lot of in the Cove of the Palisades, and it's called the Deschutes Formation, and it's a lot of volcanic debris and volcanic material from the early High Cascades from 7.5 to 4.5 million years ago, when the high Cascades were starting to do their thing, they were very explosive. They were very eruptive, much more violent eruptions than we're accustomed to right now. So you're going to see a lot of evidence of that in the Deschutes Formation. It's all these layers of all kinds of different stuff. And then at a slightly different angle, let me see if I can get that right. So the Deschutes Formation will be flat, and then at a slightly different angle below that, you're going to see some Columbia River basalts. And below that, kind of at the same angle, you're going to see something called the John Day Formation. And all that stuff is older. So John Day is the oldest. Columbia River basalts are happened next in Earth's history. And then this Deschutes Formation happened between 7.5 and 4.5 million years ago. So you're starting to drive into the Deschutes Canyon. And I think from at mile marker 100, you start dropping down into the canyon, or mile marker 99, but it takes 12 miles to go down, cross over the river, and go back up the canyon, and you're getting a sneak peek of all these really cool volcanic sediments. And it's another interesting thing about these is they're coming from all different directions. Like the John Day Formation came up from the southeast, and the Columbia River basalts came up from the northeast, and the Deschutes Formation came from due west. Major provinces are happening right there. It's a meeting point. So you're driving down. 26 and 97 are just about to meet at Madras, and that's where we're going to turn and make our way into the Cove of the Palisades. So the Deschutes is flowing through, and the Crooked River is a tributary of the Deschutes, so it flows into the Deschutes, and also right in that same area, the Metolius River also flows into the Deschutes. So three rivers unite at that spot, and they all cut a canyon into this Deschutes Formation, volcanic debris from the early high Cascades. This stuff was laid down. It was super thick, like 2,000 feet thick, and these rivers are cutting right through it. They're making a canyon out of these relatively soft volcanic sediments. I'll focus on the Crooked River, which is when we're going to be kind of looking at and driving by and everything. So the Crooked River cut down through all these layers of the Deschutes Formation, and then about 1.2 million years ago, some basalt erupted. About 60 miles south, it started to flow along the Crooked River, where it has incised its stream, and it followed it, and it stayed in the canyon. It was kind of trapped in the canyon. It's called an intra-canyon basalt. And it flowed all the way down to the Crooked River, runs into the Deschutes River, and it got blocked, so it actually continued to flow, but backed up into the Deschutes River Canyon. That just happened 1.2 million years ago, and that didn't stop the rivers from flowing. The Crooked River's like, well, dang, I guess I got to cut through this now. And so it's kind of like a chainsaw, just like just cuts right down. And so the Crooked River cut another canyon in this former canyon that was flooded with basalt. Basalt kind of met up with the former canyon wall. You can kind of see the Deschutes Formation as some tan lines, and they stop at an angle, and you see this dark gray massive flood basalt there, and that's where the lava flow just kind of like stayed in the canyon and flowed, and that's the canyon wall right there. It's a really cool exact point of some interesting geologic action. Really great columnar basalts in that intra-canyon basalt flow. You'll see them all over the place. And the ship is another really cool feature in the Cove of the Palisades, and that shows in the Deschutes Formation of some really explosive volcanic eruptions. The thickest formation is called the Cove Ignibrite. Ignibrite? I'm not saying that right, but it's like a volcanic ash. The most recent geologic action that's been happening there are landslides, and you can see those are landslides because you kind of see the talus slips falling down, and more geology action right there. Geology rocks.